Hello, I'm children's author A.M. Howell, and I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my new book, Mysteries at Sea, Peril on the Atlantic, which is a mystery adventure set on a real ocean liner called the Queen Mary. Now, this story was partly inspired by my own travels as a child, as my dad used to go overseas for work and we would often go by sea. I really enjoyed exploring the decks and meeting new passengers and going to new destinations, and all of those things helped inspire this new series. Peril on the Atlantic is set on the Queen Mary as she steams between Southampton and New York, and Alice is on board. She's 12 years old and her father is second in command on the ship. Alice has never left England and she's really overwhelmed to be on this amazing ship with exotic food and celebrity guests and incredible surroundings. But as she begins to explore, she discovers something terrible. There is a shocking attack in the indoor swimming pool, and she and her new friend Sunny decide they must investigate and solve the crime. But as they begin to investigate, they discover a sinister plot involving gold bars, secret notes, and lost silk gloves. Alice also discovers that her father is keeping secrets too. Why does he visit the luggage hold whenever the ship docks in New York? The things she discovers will change the course of her own life forever. When I travelled with my family by sea, I loved the feeling of being in the middle of the ocean, miles and miles from anywhere. We often saw whales and dolphins and flying fish, and spotting those things and looking through a pair of binoculars made the voyage really, really special. And I remember recording all of those things in my diaries at the time. Now, I had the idea that Sunny, who is Alice's friend in the story, was educated at sea, and the idea for that came from a group of school children I once met on a voyage I was doing with my parents, who were travelling the world with their teachers, and I couldn't believe this was so amazing. They would have lessons in the morning and then explore the ports we visited in the afternoon and then catch up on all their schoolwork in the evening. It was a really incredible way to live. But Sunny in the story, in Peril on the Atlantic, finds us a little bit lonely, and I can understand why. So I think it's really nice that he makes a good friend with Alice on board. Once I decided to write a story set on a real ocean liner, I needed to find the right ship to put into the story. Now, I soon realised that I had a connection to a particular ship, and that is the Queen Mary, and that is the ship that I chose to feature in the story. And you can see a beautiful picture of her on the front cover of the book. Now, my parents had stayed on this ship, which is now moored up in Long Beach, California, and she's used as a museum and a hotel. But not only that, my husband's grandparents had travelled on the ship in the 1960s between Southampton and New York. So I realised that was the perfect ship to feature in the story. The Queen Mary has a really long and fascinating history. She was built in 1936 for Cunard White Star Line in Clydebank, Scotland, and she was launched in the same year that the story Peril on the Atlantic is set. She was also billed as the fastest ship afloat, and this gave me the idea to feature a trophy called the Blue Ribbon Trophy in the story. Now, the Blue Ribbon Trophy is awarded to a ship that crosses the Atlantic in the fastest time, and the Queen Mary was so fast she won this award a number of times. In 1938, she crossed the Atlantic eastbound in less than 4 days, which is a huge achievement, as even today the crossing takes about 5 days on a modern ocean liner. She retained that award for the further 14 years, which I think is a really lovely fact. The range of passengers who travelled on the Queen Mary were a huge inspiration for Peril on the Atlantic. There were people from all walks of life and nationalities. There were those who were emigrating to America in the hope of achieving a better life, and those who were escaping atrocities such as those happening in Germany in the late 1930s due to the rise of the Nazi Party. Now, in my story, Peril on the Atlantic, Alice and Sunny meet a girl called Miriam, whose family are Jewish, and they're using all of their life savings to travel to America to start a new life in California, where she has relatives. There are also some really glamorous passengers on board the Queen Mary, including King Edward VIII and his friend Mrs. Wallace Simpson, who loved the ship and travelled on her a number of times with their dogs and 120 pieces of luggage, which I find absolutely incredible. This is the king, he had a lamppost installed in the dog kennels so that his dogs would feel more at home when they went about their daily business, which I think is a lovely fact. There were also many celebrity guests who travelled on the Queen Mary, including Fred Astaire, the actor from Hollywood, and he makes a cameo appearance in Peril on the Atlantic, so watch out for that. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about my inspiration for my new book, Mysteries at Sea, Peril on the Atlantic, and thank you very much for listening. The book is available in bookshops now.